I love asking you this question about when you first read a comic and how did you react to that?
Well, I had one sibling, my sister, who was 11 years older than I was when I was born, and she still is. But she was a comic book hoarder, maybe not a collector. She didn't keep them in order and look for back issues, but she kept all of her comics, and she was about 7 or 8 years old. So I grew up with the memories of a comic reader 11 years older than myself, because the house was always filled with her comics now. So naturally, I don't have any memory of the first time I looked at one of her comics. So I was looking at them before I could read them. Maybe somebody was reading them to me. The big sisters don't like little brothers enough that I don't think she was reading them to me. But, so I certainly don't have any memory of the first time that I read a Karl Barks comic. She had lots of other comics, but in those days, like it still is in Europe and most of the rest of the world, Karl Barks's Donald Duck and Uncle Scrooge comics were the best-selling comics. Since then, they've been completely forgotten in America, but Americans virtually read very few comics anyway. They got movies and TV shows and games and toys, but comic books have been a failure in America for 50 years as far as readership. But I grew up with lots of different kind of comics, like you still have here in Europe. Many different types. Donald Duck comics, superhero comics, cowboy comics. We don't have any cowboy comics in America. Tex Miller, do you have those? That's an Italian.
And I identify with this gray zone of hoarder versus collector. It's always like an issue at home. But you don't remember the exact comic, but obviously it was your older sister. Mm-hmm. Did you want to impress her kind of by taking on this heritage of comics?
No.
My son
little brothers and older sisters, I don't think we get along so much. Because she was a teenager by the time I was able to practically walk. No, it was just, and I also grew up a great deal way out in the country. Didn't have anything else to do. I'm not running around in the woods. And there was nothing on television to see. We only had 2 channels in those days. So I'd sit there and read her comic books. But anyway, even in those days, the best-selling comic books, even in America, were Karl Barks' Donald Duck. I certainly don't say Disney's Donald Duck, because Disney had nothing to do with it. That's one point I always try to make when I'm interviewed in Europe. People give Disney credit for all these wonderful comics, and Disney wasn't even involved in this. They were all produced, written, and drawn by independent, freelance writers and artists like me, like Karl Barks and hundreds of others, working for independent licensed publishers, and Disney was not involved at all. Most of the characters were not even created by Disney. They were created by the publishing companies and the writers and artists.
We have a Minnie Mouse imitator on the front row here. It's a bit shaded. No, but we're going to just say D word from now on, and then we are referring to Disney and nothing else. But so when did you know that comics would be your calling then? From this, adventurous reading at home to actually thriving in it yourself?
It wasn't until I was about 38 years old. I knew what I was going to do. I was going to take over the family construction company. My grandfather moved to America 1899 from Italy. He was completely illiterate, but in those days, that's lots of Europeans that start a new life, a better chance to prove themselves. They moved to America, and he started being Italian. He didn't start a pizza shop, but he started a tile and terrazza and marble company. And within a few years, he was very successful. And but anyway, from the moment I was born, I knew I was destined to take over the family construction company because I was highly qualified by being the son and grandson of the founder. And I knew that's what I was going to do. In college, my only education, I don't have any training in art, so people can see that. The only drawing training I have is the mechanical drawing, because I have a degree in civil engineering. And that's what I knew I was going to do.
That's good. Yeah.
And I was sure until, but I was always a comic book collector, fierce comic book. In fact, I've got one of the biggest collections of old comics in America. Not just Disney comics, those are quote marks, Disney comics, but everything, superheroes, westerns, everything from about World War II on. But it was just a hobby. I would always do the comic strips for the grade school newspaper, and the high school newspaper, and the college newspaper, and then after that, fanzines. I do comic strips. But I knew that was just going to be a hobby until it's hard to give short answers because this is so complicated. The Disney
was
comics,
38, very clearly, 38.
The Disney comics disappeared in America around 1970, 1975, because Americans had already stopped reading comics. And the publisher of the so-called Disney Comics was the biggest publisher of comics in America, but they published many other things. So when comics stopped selling, well, which would have been in the early 70s, they just gave them up. So there were no novel about Uncle Scrooge comics for at least 10 years in America, but finally a little group of people, friends of mine, comic book fans and collectors like myself, I'd seen at the comic conventions I've been going through for over 50 years, since the late 60s. They managed to get the license because they were fans of the Disney comics, which was primarily Karl Marx and Floyd Gottfredson. And they started publishing, and they got the license with just like 3 guys, but nobody else wanted it. So for all of North America, these 3 guys had the license, like Egmont does in Europe, which is a huge company. Just these 3 guys started reprinting the classic Karl Marx and Floyd Gottfredson stories. And I saw that, and since I knew these guys, I called them up and I said, you know me, I was born to write and draw an Uncle Scrooge adventure. That was my manifest destiny to do that. And they said, they knew me and they couldn't argue with manifest destiny. So they let me do one. It was called The Son of the Sun. I even adapted a story that I had written and drawn for a college newspaper, which was like an Uncle Scrooge adventure, a treasure hunt based on actual fact, but with my own characters. And I had just adapted that into how I'd always seen it in my mind as an Uncle Scrooge adventure. They liked it and they published it, and I thought I was finished. I completed a childhood dream of creating one grand Uncle Scrooge adventure, and I went back to the family construction company, but then it started attracting attention. And in fact, the very first American Comic Book Awards, now the name was the Eisners, but then the first one in those days was the Harvey. Instead of being named after Will Eisner, they were named after Harvey Kurtzman, both geniuses of the early years of comics. And the very first awards in America for comics, that Son of the Sun story was nominated as the best story of the year. First thing I'd ever done, and in a continent of superhero comics, it was still nominated as the best. And that caught my attention, so I thought I'd do another one. And then I'd do another one, and within a year, I decided to, sadly, to liquidate my grandfather's successful construction company and stop making any money, but writing and drawing Uncle Scrooge adventures for a living. Now,
that's a big life lesson for all of you. No more Marvel.
But you have to be married to a teacher who's going to take care of you. So I knew my wife had a steady job and had insurance for me.
Thank God for these women with steady jobs. Definitely.
That's right.
But you came to take over and develop after Karl Marx, your hero.
I didn't take over anything.
You continued his legacy, as we say, but
like many other people did.
Yes. But how did you cope with that pressure? And I imagine for you, very high.
Other people ask me, say, how did you like take over, cope with the pressure? never occurred to me. I'm not replacing him. And I knew there were other people doing it. So that never crossed my mind. I just knew I was going to be entertaining myself.
That makes you a superhuman, though. I think it would be daunting for anyone to kind of like continue with that.
Yeah, I've come across that later, and I'm not even sure. Why would it be daunting? I didn't think I'd attract any attention. I could tell. I mean, even at the time, I didn't know these were still the best-selling comic books all over the world. I thought it was like in America, they disappeared. Maybe I would, but still, I knew that these comics were being produced by trained cartoonists and very on-model and beautiful artwork. And I never thought I'd attract any attention. I could see my artwork was like, well, later realized it was fan art. I just thought it was crude. But now I know, now we recognize there's professional art and there's fan art. And I never felt like a professional. And I found out later that what I felt like was a fan artist. Like you see all over the internet, and that's how I saw myself. So I never thought I'd attract any attention. I'm a comic book fan. I can recognize crude artwork when I see it. But I think the secret of my success is that other people, and I would say, I always say this, probably used it the last time we talked. Other Donald Duck and Uncle Scrooge, Marx fans look at it and say, for somebody to obviously put so much effort into such bad art, he's having a good time. And they enjoy the fact that they can see how much fun I'm having. I guess that's the only explanation, because right away, apparently, when Egmont started publishing my stories, it got very popular right away. But that's the only reason I can see. People could see I was having fun.
That's a very good mindset, I think.
Elevated
fan art, which you're having fun with. But besides having fun, obviously there has been a lot of very proud moments for you. Which one is a highlight of yours?
Proud moments? Well, right away I started getting invited to Europe. I never thought I'd even see Europe. I like to make 3 trips to Europe every year from then on. All expense paid. I don't see anything but hotels and restaurants and inside convention centers. That's still mighty fun. But it's impossible for you to even imagine the pleasure I get, the incredible gratification of so many Duck fans like myself treating me so nice. And I don't even want to concentrate on it because I'll get choked up. I always do. I still can't get used to it after 30 years. That other Duck fans appreciate the spirit of my comics because they can see I'm enjoying myself, and it's very frustrating working for these publishers. They're not this way anymore. Egmont is. But when I first went to work for Egmont, they were just churning stuff out for kids as they saw it. None of the people were comic book fans at the company, and to work for them and to work in this whole Disney system was really frustrating, and I wouldn't have done it for more than a few years, except for the European fans' appreciation. And that kept me going. So I thank everybody, all the Duck fans in Europe.
That is obviously a derogatory image that kind of still lingers in certain areas, that this is like a young adult, child culture. How have you seen that kind of progress during your career or change?
Well, there's always been people like me, young adult fan culture, but the publishers didn't recognize it because it wasn't organized. But that's one thing I think that I taught Egmont, that there's money to be made with adult readers, and they didn't believe that at first. They would actually, I still remember Norwegian editors of the comics, and I'd go there and appear before the groups of adult fans, and they would even nudge me and say, "Don't pay any attention to those freaks." They considered they resented the adult fans. I think they knew that because these people didn't understand comics, they didn't understand proper sound effects or proper coloring, or they just turned the stuff out for kiddies, and they thought adults who read comics were freaks. And I still remember when the guy nudged me and told me that, he said, "He's calling me a freak." But those people are gone now. because they realize they can make a lot of money off adults. And kids at the same time.
Yeah,
Because
or
this is an intelligent hobby. It's not just something for kids like they thought.
maybe they're not gone. Maybe they're the head of certain like film and television adaptations. So how do you feel about that? Originals being turned into TV and film. Do you have any examples of more well-executed examples, or do you just decide on original series, comics being turned into television and film? How do you do that? Have you seen any?
Well, I'd rather not get into how disappointed I am that American films are just nothing but adolescent superhero movies. And I like superheroes. Every superhero comic created between I used to have them between World War II and 1990. But I lost interest in the superhero comics after about 1970. I don't know why I kept buying them for another 15 years. Because
Just the hoarder speaking.
they're violent. I love the superhero comics of the 60s and 50s and 60s. But I got rid of all those. I got so fed up with them and disappointed in what I knew kind of comics they had in Europe that I finally just divested myself of all the American comics from 1970 to 1990. But I'm still a big collector of all American comics from, like I say, World War II up to about 1970. But I don't know, I'm not sure if I have an answer to your question.
You haven't seen the superhero films?
I see some of the early ones. There's just too many of them. You got CGI now. You can do any sort of movie you want to and create it out of thin air. You can do military epics, historical epics, incredible history movies. And they're making adolescent superhero movies, just one after another. And I'm a huge movie buff. And I just think it's lost our way. So I'd just rather not talk about it.
I think we all agree. But we're actually going to start accepting people to form online. Maybe in this area here. But first I want to ask you, which I asked last year, which character in the Donald Duck universe do you personally relate to the most or identify with?
I don't think I originally identified with them. Oh, probably the nephews, I guess.
The nephews.
Yeah, especially when I was a kid. I like the Junior Woodchucks. I enjoyed that. But the main thing that comes to mind when people ask me that question is when I realized later, like I said, after that first story was nominated for an Eisner and all that stuff, and decided, well, maybe I'll do this for the rest of my life. I started noticing that I could enjoy doing Uncle Scrooge comics if, in the European comics, after like Egmont and a few other European companies had to start creating their own stories when they stopped producing them in America, they had some misconceptions about Karl Marx's Scrooge, and they started making it greedy, especially in the Italian comics, just plain greedy. And I knew I couldn't enjoy doing stories of a character who was simply greedy. So I certainly didn't want to change Karl Marx's version, but Karl Marx never had Scrooge as being greedy, and it being cheap. And that brings to mind the worst misconception that the European produced Uncle Scrooge comics have of Scrooge, and it's the fault of an editor back probably in the late 40s, early 50s, adapting Uncle Scrooge stories, American Uncle Scrooge, Karl Marx Uncle Scrooge stories for Europe. They had the money bin would be filled with gold coins, which misses the point completely. It's one of Karl Marx's best general gags, is it's not precious money, it's not gold coins, it was pocket change. He wasn't greedy for gold, he just was so cheap that he saved pocket changes in 3 cubic acre buildings.
Actually, a significant difference. I have to agree. I haven't even thought about that.
It's a complete difference. It completely misunderstands who he is or why he... So I started to try to force myself to identify him and enjoy telling stories about him. He's a collector. He's a collector of memories. He saves that money, but he doesn't spend it greedy people want money to spend and buy power. He just saves it because he loves remembering all of the adventures he had earning it.
Again, a hoarder association.
So I'm imposing my own beliefs on Scrooge, and then I don't perceive him. I never did, but I think I sort of twist his other people's perceptions. I try to. So you see, he's not greedy. He's just cheap, and he likes his memories. He's a collector of memories.
Very nice. Let's do a first round of questions. Maybe like 5 of them. Yes. Hi. You can step up a little bit. What's your name?
Hi, my name is Sabina.
Hey.
Hi. I want to ask you a question. What made you still going? What is your passion about still going on with writing and producing?
Karl Marx. That's the most enjoyable thing in my childhood was the Karl Marx comics I grew up with. And comics in general. That's all. I wasn't trying to, I knew there was no way to make money. The publishers in Disney take all the money.
Yeah.
It was just the enjoyment of comics.
But Sabina, do you also mean like during this
During
career?
your process, your passion, like what's making you like giving inspiration? Who's giving you that inspiration? Is it from yourself, or is it from your wife, or someone else who gives you the extra inspiration?
The only inspiration I had was I enjoyed reading comics, so I enjoyed creating.
You kept pouring into that well, kept reading and...
But I will say that after the frustration of doing that for 20 years, completely destroyed that passion, and I quit. I
That's a
didn't
good
quit
answer.
because I made any money at it. I just quit because they destroyed my passion for it. The system, not the, like I said, not the appreciation of the fans, just the abuse of the system. Like I knew I was never, and I knew I would never get wealthy, but when I realized that they were using my passion against me, never paying me royalties, I used to get these free trips to Europe all the time, and I even knew they were exploiting my passion talking to other fans, and they even finally realized that the other people who write all the comics, they're not invited to, their stuff is not as strangely popular as mine. They weren't invited to go make, 2 or 3 week trips to Europe. I go there and promote the publisher's books, for which I don't get royalties. I'm just going there making them more money, because I love talking to nut fans. And the other writers and artists who weren't so strangely popular, they stayed home and kept working. So I was making less money because I was so popular. That's not the way it's supposed to work. But I did that, on my own worst enemy. Finally I realized that's, I think that the turning point was, I was on another tour in Europe, and I think I was about to go on national television or something like that's like in a dream. It's very surreal. In America, I'm nobody. In Europe, I'm like a rock star. But and one of the reporters was talking to me before I went on. He says, it must be nice that now, after all the years you've worked, you can tour Europe because you're so rich. And I realized that everybody thinks I'm a multimillionaire because my work is so popular. And I don't get a penny in royalties. And that's when it started to bother me. Because I realized I knew I'd never make money, but everybody thinks I'm making money. And it makes me feel like a world-class chump. I started to dislike myself. That I have so, it's not I've always had too much self-respect, but to let myself be just willingly abused by these publishers and licensees. And that's one of it started too much frustration, and I finally got out of it, but lots of reasons.
So the inspiration for the comics, that was never an issue, but the whole system of it,
The system,
the frustration was too much.
What can we give all the fans here advice so they don't get abused like you did?
Do you have any advice for comics or
For all the fans in here that are listening to you.
Well, it's hard
to not get exploited?
Yeah, like you did.
It's hard to do because they'll use your love for what you do against you. or not maybe against you, but for themselves. Now, that's too depressing to get into.
No, but maybe start your own venture together.
Yes.
With the strength in being many.
Create something, just don't fall in love with Disney characters. Well, they're not Disney characters. Don't fall in love with Karl Marx characters, because his characters belong to Disney through some freak in the legal system. Actually, you know, as I understand it, in Europe, Karl Marx owned the rights to everything he created. And I'm told by the European lawyers, I personally own the rights to everything I ever created. And I should be a multimillionaire, but I'm not. Life's too sharp to try to fight Disney.
Thank you so much.
I'm sure there's some lawyer person here to help us. Thank you, Sabrina, for that. First question. Thank you. Our next contestant. Look, I just have to say, I now see the jewelry from the movie Kiki, by Studio Ghibli. I apologize for saying Minnie earlier. I didn't see the group, okay? Hi, welcome. Mike Man. Hello. Who are you?
Hello, my name is Mario. I came here from Austria just to meet you. I'm very pleased. I finally did it. So I got some comments from my friends in Indonesia. Will there ever be a chance that Don Rosa goes to Asia?
I go anywhere I'm invited. So, but I've never been invited to Asia.
I see what I can do.
I get there's Facebook pages. They're not my Facebook pages, but fans have Don Rosa Facebook pages, and I have to give Mr. Facebook my permission that they could use my name on these. But constantly people are sending in messages, you know, why don't you ever come to this country? Why don't you ever come to this city? And I just keep writing back, get me invited there. That's I go anywhere I'm invited. I don't just show up in a city and, you know, if there's a convention I hear about, I don't just show up there and I say, where's my table? They have to invite me. I just go where I'm invited. So.
But you do have a big channel now, right? It's on Facebook?
A big one.
The person that is filming here, I think he has some kind of channel.
That's his. It's not mine.
Yeah, but he can put it out there. Indonesia, we want to go.
No, I don't ask. I don't beg to be invited.
No.
The fans need to. Yeah, I've got a strange attitude towards self-promotion. I abhor it. You know, but if somebody, I just tell them, you have to get me invited. I never, you know, write to anybody and say, please invite me. No, that's just not my nature. But yeah, the Facebook pages are, I give my permission to other people to have them, and they take care of them very well. And I'm always looking at them, but I'm just a member of the forum like everybody else.
Do you have another question? All of it from
The thing was, I mean, most all writers, artists, and authors have their own web pages, and but see, if I had a web page that promoted my own work so much that it sold an extra 1 trillion copies an issue, I'd just be making money for other people. I wouldn't get a penny of that. So I let other people have the.
You do know we would buy anything else you also made that is completely yours.
People know, for decades, people have said, well, now you've made a name for yourself.
Yeah.
You caught people's attention because you're doing these very popular Karl Marx stories. So now you can go out and create your own character, and people will read it and maybe say, but that's not the reason I do comics. If I created something next week, it's not something that I grew up with my whole life, so I wouldn't care about it. So I'd much rather do Karl Marx stories and something that really means something to me personally. This sounds corny, doesn't it?
No.
It's the way I am.
It's a very particular principle. Let me just assure you, if you have like a pile of your own books or something here, we will all buy one. Mario, you have another question. All of you from Austria.
May I actually?
Sorry?
May I? Because there's something that I'm having in my mind for a while. So what I always loved about your comics, you put so much love into little details. I find that amazing, and sometimes going through the pages one more time after a long time, I realize there is just stuff in I haven't seen before.
Okay, you're talking about the background things. Okay, because drawing comics, I learned pretty quick, the main characters are easy to draw. It's the backgrounds that are so time-consuming, and people who do make any money at this, they hire people to do the backgrounds, and they just do the main characters. But it doesn't pay you. Now, I should always say the pay is excellent. Egmont's pay is excellent, but I'm very slow. I get paid per page, and I probably take 3 or 4 or 5 times longer to draw because of all that detail. Anyway, I realized that the readers. The backgrounds are by far the most difficult part to draw. The readers don't see the backgrounds. They're just looking at the main characters. So I decided, well, I'm going to put things going on in the background to force them to pay attention.
So
but then they're going to have to read it a second time, or third time. But that's the reason, so somebody will pay attention to all that work in the background.
Do you have any favorite details or Easter eggs or layers you put in there?
Well, I used to do nasty things to Mickey Mouse.
I
I don't dislike Mickey Mouse. I just sort of resent his popularity over Donald Duck in America because he's just a cute character, and America is just too obsessed with cuteness. And Donald Duck is an interesting. Karl Barks's Donald Duck is a much more interesting character, so I like to use Mickey Mouse in the background. You might see him on the bottom of an elephant's foot.
Is that a favorite of yours?
I loved it.
Yeah?
So the question, did you put some secrets in there of which you know they haven't been revealed yet? Like something, because fans, they're dissecting your comics.
Yeah.
They have discovered you can find so many pages on the internet where they find this, they put something there and there.
Well, that's fun to do. And the one detail is that in the very first That Son of the Sun story, at the very end of it, I put dedication, the D-U-C-K, dedicated to Uncle Carl from Keno, that's my first name. And it was removed because it looked like an autograph, it looked like a signature. So from then on, and we weren't, in those days, they weren't allowed to tell anybody the names of the people who wrote through the stories. That's another thing that I think I influenced them to start doing. I made them realize that something in America they learned in the 60s, that if you tell the readers the names of the writers and artists, it makes the work more popular because they feel a connection with the people that are creating it. So after I went to work for them, I think I convinced them that you need to start telling the readers the names of the writers and artists, which finally they did. About the D-U-C-K, so I knew I was going to continue to put a dedication in there. That was very important to me. So I just did it. And because I knew, I told you what the Egmont people were in those days. I'm talking about the Egmont people now. This is 30 years ago. I knew the readers of the comics were much smarter than the editors. And the readers would see the dedications, but the editors, they weren't bright enough to find those. So I hid the dedications from the editors, but I knew the readers would spot it.
Nice. Thank you so much, Lloyd.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy your trip. Thank you. Who are you?
My name is Elias, and I guess I was wondering if you were able to write a canonical ending to the Donald Duck comics, how would you do it? Like, where would the characters end up?
Alternative ending.
Yeah, well, not that interested.
An ultimate ending.
Like Uncle Scrooge.
Pretty much.
I would have liked for somebody to publish it. The thing that brings to mind is probably not going to be much use. Just and I always had in the back of my mind what the story would be. But just in the past year, it was actually started about a year ago. A Danish duck fan, lady, sent me a page that she had written and drawn of the missing page from the last story that I ever created. It was called in English, The Prisoner of White Agony Creek. It was a Life of Scrooge story, sort of. And once I finished that, and this was another reason why I quit, along with at least a half dozen reasons along with that the system destroying my enthusiasm. I liked that story so much that I knew I'd never create another story that I liked more. I figured, well, then I should quit. But she sent, if anybody's familiar with that story, there's something that happens in a log cabin that you don't see. And she sent me the missing scene, and it was perfect. She was exactly right, and that really appealed to me when I know, I hear lots of compliments from readers, but when I have the opportunity for some reader to say they like this, but then they explain to me why they liked it, and I find out it's exactly the reason that they, in other words, the person understood it completely. They just didn't like this part of it or that part of it. They understood it exactly what I wanted them to understand. Anyway, that was an amazing thing, because she created the scene that, I mean, this wasn't X-rated, but it was M-rated, and it was exactly what happened, and that you didn't see what's happening in the log. And then she told me she was going to, with her family, travel to America and wanted to see what it's like for me at an American convention. Like in Europe, people wait 6 or 7 hours in line just to get a quick autograph. And in America, I still go to American shows because I've been going to comic book conventions for 50 years. And now I can go to a comic book convention and give me a free room and a free table. But these are people I've known, comic book dealers my age, and they enjoy having me at a show. It's something that the average person can understand instead of superhero collectors. Anyway, she wanted to come and see the incredible difference. Because in America, Americans don't even know these comics ever existed anymore, because the people like me who enjoyed Karl Marx comics were all 60, 70 years old. But she knew that in America, I'll sit there at a table, even bigger display than the guy has here. He's got like, I don't know, 40 or 50 prints, and I have nearly 100 different prints, because I overdo everything. But I'll sit there alone, and I'll get maybe one interested person come by every 15 minutes, and only one person, maybe an hour, who actually knows what I do. So she came and wanted to be like my assistant, just to see what that's like. Go from being obscure to like a rock star.
The Danish lady.
The Danish.
Oh, wow.
And she was going to go visit other friends in America and take a drive to the Blue Ridge Parkway and some things.
Can you explain to us what was that definite ending she proposed that Elias was asking about?
That was just a missing page.
Yeah, I was like, if you had any ideas, like maybe Scrooge ending up with gold digger.
Okay, just wait, let me finish my story.
Oh, yeah.
So she came, and when she showed up, she gave me a 20-page comic that she created, even, self-published, a couple of copies of it. And this time it's in full color, and it's the final chapter of the life of Scrooge. And it tells that exact story. And it's magnificent. But I'm not going to tell you more than that.
You're not going to spoil it to us? No?
No, it was a very personal thing. She even, at that show and at another show back in America, she would be there, and I would, I know the shows I go to, I know that in each city there's maybe a half dozen real Karl Marx fans who really understand his work, and they know exactly what I do, they understand it like she did. And so I'll sit there and I'll say, now this next guy is coming, he's a real fan. And she'll give a copy of the book to him.
Oh, nice. You have to go to a show then.
But in Europe, because she's going to appear with me at next week when I do some shows, some store signings in Copenhagen, she'll be there, and she'll have some of the magazines, but we can't give them to all the real Marx fans there, because that'd be everybody. So she's not sure what she's going to do with them.
What's her name? The Danish artist?
I don't know if she won't be there.
We have to look on the Facebook page to see.
Maybe you're already saying too much. But besides that, she doesn't really, and I can understand this, she doesn't want everybody to know about it. It's a really personal thing. She wants only maybe certain people.
Thank you.
Maybe
Yeah.
just me.
Yeah, perfect.
She just wanted to show me that she understood what I was thinking, and that's the important thing. But you know, just to pass it out to everybody. That's not why she did it. She wasn't doing it to get personal attention. She was doing it. She just like I did. When I had something inside of me, I had to get out, and that's what she did. Just for 4 or 5 months last year, she had to get this out of her system, and she created a story just for herself.
I'm going to try to find her on dark web. Thank you so much, Elias, for that question. Thank you. Let's move on to our next question, I suppose.
I'm going to have to tell her that somebody asked me that very
Yeah, you have to tell
Yeah, I
her.
will.
Hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Angelica. Huge moment. This is a childhood hero of mine. So, hi. I just have a question. 10 years ago, an album was released, The Life and Times of Scrooge, by Thomas Holopainen. Yeah. How do you feel about other artists taking your work and making such huge personal works themselves? And do you know if it will ever be available for purchase? Because it's impossible to find them.
Well, I don't know anything about how you can find it. You can't find them anymore? I thought it was just re-released a few months ago.
Oh, no, you can buy it for like $900 on eBay and stuff like that, so it's...
I know it was re-released a few months ago.
Months ago, then it's already out, because I've been looking.
I've never heard of it selling for any enormous amount of money. But I don't really know, I mean, I know him but what's your exact question? Something about?
How do you feel about other artists taking your work and making their own personal work like that?
Well, that's what I did with Karl Marx, so I can't object to it. I'm not sure if you like what I did. Some people have told me he didn't. Some people told me he did much, but so I just can't object to that. Well, okay, I'll admit that, and people show me this stuff, and they want me to approve it. I'm not going to do that. Nobody approved my work. I just did it because it was inside of me and it had to come out. And I don't have the right to approve anybody else's work. They just should do whatever they want to do and not worry about what I think about it. I've got no right to have an opinion on it. Their editors are the ones who need to have their opinion, or their readers, not me. Because surely if they're basing, like if they're doing more Life of Scrooge, that's the interesting thing. When I was doing the Life of Scrooge, once I finished it, I still loved it, and I wanted to do more. And finally, after I did 1 or 2, the editors at Egmont said, "No, don't do any more of those." I said, "Why not?" I said, "Nobody likes them." And I knew every fan mail I got, and I mean 99.9% of them, 100% of them, the first sentence would be how much they loved the Life of Scrooge stories. So I kept doing them, but I think that instead of at Egmont said they didn't want them, so I did it for the French publisher, and then of course Egmont gets them for free. So,
Good principle, you don't approve other people's
well,
work.
of course not. It's not my right to. But I've seen. Oh, that's what I was going to say. And yet now, this is the same company who said nobody wants this stuff. Just stop. They're hiring other people to do additional Life of Scrooge stories, and now they're publishing books of my Life of Scrooge stories with these other Life of Scrooge stories. So that's the difference I was talking about earlier, the difference between the Egmont of today and the Egmont of 30 years ago. Now, I've read some of these. They're all beautifully drawn, because I can see that these people draw much better than I can. They're trained artists. But I do see things that are not historically accurate. Mine are always intensely historically accurate. Like one I had the Beagle Boys operating a steamboat in the Mississippi, where Scrooge having a steamboat race in the Mississippi River. And then one of these other artists had the Beagle Boys show up in their steamboat in the Yukon. That's preposterous. You can't sail a steamboat through the ocean. It would sink instantly. So I would never do that, but if that's what he wants to do, that's none of my business.
No.
So instead, I shouldn't even be talking about that now. It's none of my business.
No business.
That's the last time. I got to remember not to even get into that. Because he's telling a different sort of a story than I was. His are, he's more of a flight of fancy, and mine were just very nerdy, and everything had to be completely historically accurate. But that was my problem. He could relax a little bit and just, worry about telling an entertaining story, and I just had to force myself to do it a certain way.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We have our next question.
Hi, my name is John. How many questions do you get?
You can
So
answer.
I got 4, but I will be quick.
I give long answers.
Yeah, so ask 2, and then maybe you will have to go back in line.
Yeah, all right. My first question is, since you're a big fan of Barks, any particular story of his that left a big impression on you? Because there has to be, the spark, how it starts, how you got interested in Karl Barks.
So any
Any
particular
particular
story
story?
that gave you a big impression?
Yes, it's like I've hired these people to ask me just the right questions.
It's not a coincidence.
When I was reading comics at such an early age that I think I outgrew them at an early age and got more interested in movies and television, old movies. And I just got bored with the comics that were being produced in like the mid-'60s. And my sister stopped buying them. So when I went and started looking for Donald Duck comics, I think I picked out a few for my parents to buy me, and they didn't happen to be Marx or that particular artist. Anyway, so I decided, I must have outgrown these comics. Anyway, I started reading like the Superman comics and some other titles of the 60s, which were nothing like superhero comics now, but besides that. So I unloaded all my sister's comics because I thought they were kid stuff. I figured that's just trying to understand why I didn't enjoy the new ones. I figured maybe I must have outgrown all of them. But there were 2 comics by this particularly good artist, whoever he was, that I couldn't bear to part with. One was, if you know the American titles of the stories, was The Golden Helmet. A great Donald Duck adventure, based on some Scandinavian origins. I loved that story. It encompassed everything that I liked about a good adventure. It was funny, it was dangerous, it was very adult emotions. And then the second one was called Only a Poor Old Man, which I didn't know at the time. It was the very first Uncle Scrooge solo story, where he was the star of the story. I mean, he'd appeared as a supporting character for about 4 years or so, but this was when the Dell publishing company, who was responsible for creating the character, who Barks created at Bark, they just said, this character's so popular, we're going to put him in his own comic and give him a backstory and give him, and of course it didn't have a number 1 on it. Plus I was just a little kid. I didn't look for numbers. I didn't understand.
So the first solo.
Where he's the star and Donald Duck is the supporting character. And that was a magnificent story. I realized even from a kid, I must have been a pretty bright kid.
Yeah, you must have been.
But I think it came from watching, I was such a fan of old movies on TV. I wasn't that big of a fan of cartoons on TV. I liked a story that didn't talk down to me. Maybe the adult movies I didn't understand completely, but I respected them. I just got a better feeling out of them. And this story, I could feel adult emotions being put into Scrooge McDuck, and it's true that he was starting to put adult emotions, not totally, he was creating stories for a short while that he thought would be interesting to both children, not tiny children, but kids and adults. And I could see that in the first 10 or 20 issues of Uncle Scrooge in America. And then his editors, I just read a book in this past year that explained that his editors told him to sort of dumb down the stories and not But this, in this story called Only a Poor Old Man, is the first time you hear about Scrooge's early life as a cowboy and as a...
Only poor old man. Very nice. We actually
well,
have
that's the end of the story.
Yeah.
At the end of the story, the main part of the story is about Scrooge going to such great efforts to defend this pocket change, the money that's...
In the money bin, yeah.
Yeah, it's not gold, it's just his pocket change, the stuff that means something to him. And that Donald and Huey Dewey Louie helped him for 30 cents an hour. And to go through all this trouble, and they finally win, and they vanquish the Beagle Boys. And at the last page of the story, they're saying, Donald, just paraphrase this, they say, you know, you think you're so wealthy, but you go to so much efforts to defend this pocket change, and you may not know it, but you're only a poor old man.
Cheap, not greedy.
I can check this. See, I can choke up.
No, I know.
And
But I'm so sorry.
finish.
No, but I'm so sorry to the question asker. We have some people standing in line for a very long time. I think we have to move on. You can take the mic, actually.
Let me finish this, though.
You can continue to speak.
There's a
So we have
panel
to
there
start
that
passing
I've never seen in any other comic book of Scrooge after they've told him he's only a poor old man. And he's just like this. And there's no words. There's just a close-up of him thinking. And that impacted me so strongly.
Poor old man. Very
Because
nice.
you actually see him wondering if they're right. Okay, so...
Hello, so we're gonna have to start
Yeah.
that you just pass the mic along each time. Thank you. You can hold on to it. Hi.
Hi, my name is Thomas. Thank you for my childhood.
That's not just that makes me feel old. And some of them now are even saying, they'll say you're one of my parents' greatest childhood heroes. Now I'm getting some, you're one of my grandparents.
Legacy, very nice.
Yeah.
What's your question?
So, Guardians of the Lost Library ends with a big reveal that had to be altered when it was translated abroad, because the original reveal only works in English. So my question is, as an American author or comic artist who has a very large international following, how much, if any, do you have to pay? How will this come out in translation in mind?
I don't worry about it a bit.
Not a bit.
I'm not doing these stories for any particular audience. I'm doing them for myself.
Thank you so much.
I put things in there that I know they can't translate, but I just say, I have to do this for myself. So I really enjoy it. So I just say, well, I apologize to the translators.
Yeah, they have a nice job though. Yeah?
Tough job on my show.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Selena, and I'm wondering, what do you think about independent artists? Those who make their own comics and...
When I'm at an American show, and I go in early before the show opens up, I walk around and look at all the displays of the independent artists who are trying to create new ideas, their own ideas, and I really admire that. Some of them I can see they're lousy ideas, and some of them are magnificent ideas. It is the whole spectrum. But the one thing I think is, God, I just took such a shortcut. I just did something that already existed because that's why I liked it. And I don't have the courage of these other people that, so I just really admire it. They're doing it maybe for a different reason. I don't know. I did it just I had something inside of me that I had to get out. But
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's clap for each aspect. Hello. I hope that's not here.
Yes, hello, my name is Carl. This is a great honor to find you. Good to meet you in person. My question is, dot comics were generally more popular in Europe than they were in America. It's like the impression. Have you ever speculated why this is? Like, why was there a bigger audience?
It's going to take me about a half hour. It's something disappeared around 1970.
Corporate interests stopped investing into this. And we can also add, is it like a European culture factor as well? Do you
Oh
think?
yes, because in America, kids just reject anything that their parents like. And in Europe, when a married couple find out they're going to have a baby, first thing they do is order a weekly subscription to Donald Duck because they want to read it themselves. So it's carried on from generation to generation.
More historical depth. Great
Traditional.
Europe.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. One shirt.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Christopher. I also had one of those subscriptions that my parents got me. What always caught my attention with your comics was your style. And you already touched a bit on this with Mari's question. So where is like the inspiration for your style? And was it...
My style was
detail,
needless and irritating detail, I always called it. That came from, some people say it reminds them of Robert Crumb art. But I think one reason that is both I and Robert Crumb spent our childhoods creating comics just for our own amusement that nobody would see. You know, we just sit around and I didn't mention that as when I was a kid. I just constantly creating comedy adventure comics that nobody would see. But it was just a thrill to see myself creating these comics. And we both did it to amuse ourselves for pastime, so we put lots of extra detail in it because the longer it took, the more time it would entertain.
So further adventure and details.
So of course, I subconsciously, I guess I was influenced by Karl Marx, but also my sister's other comics, magazines that she bought that I really liked, which were early Mad magazines, and the artwork of people like Will Elder and Harvey Kurtzman, who would pack their panels with all sorts of things happening in the background and just an incredible mass of detail. So I think that's part of the inspiration or the influence. So it's just detailed humor comics is the influence, I guess, is the question.
I think your style is just Don Rosa style. You can just coin that.
Yeah.
I think to summarize this incredible Q&A, we want you to create something that you have a complete copyright of where we can buy. And also, we require this Danish lady to give us her ending, even if anonymous somehow. Deep.
That's the thing that, I didn't mention that the things she published, just when I say publish, go to the copy store and make your like 20 magazines. Her name's nowhere in it. Because she was not trying to get personal attention. She just had to get this out of her system.
But that is what actually allows or enables corporations to maybe, ignore artists. So it's a double take on that, perhaps. Double-edged. With that, I think we have to summarize this Q&A. Thank you all for being here and studying live for such a long time. Thank you so much. And thank you to Don Rosa. Thank you so much. Everybody spoke up? Double-edged.
Time to go to work.
You did this. I think we have to go. Okay, thank you guys. Enjoy your day. Hope to see you again. Thank you.